This is not necessarily about content creation, but really content management. I know there's overlap there, but this is what I wanted to go through. I made a slide. Oh, should I make it bigger? There. That doesn't help. Why does it do that, you guys?
I don't know.
Oh, well, we're recording it, so I won't do that. We'll just leave it this way.
Yeah.
So one thing that amused me a little bit is, I sent an email out to everybody. My intent behind the email was, hey, I'm going to talk about this on Tuesday, so be thinking about this and maybe come to the meeting ready to share what you're doing. And the way I wrote that email, I think people thought I was asking, please respond to me so I can either work it into my presentation or whatever. So it was a good reminder to me to always read through your emails before you send them from the perspective of the recipient, not what's in your brain. So, but I do appreciate that. And I wanted to give a shout out to Jim in particular, because he sent me back right away, like his interpretation of my ask, which I thought was so interesting. And also reminded me that, how much things have changed, right? I used to so meticulously plan out my file structure. I don't know if everybody else did that too. My Outlook folders were like this nested work of art, which I know some people still do that. But today, I spend so little time with that. I do use file structures, and I do have places where I organize things, but I really rely on AI now and the search capabilities to find things for me, and don't worry so much about where I'm putting them, which a lot of people I know are doing that now. And just the one thing that will stump me sometimes, but this kind of used to happen before too, is I've got to name the files well. Because if I never know how I'm going to be searching, and what I've got to find things all across Google Drive, if I haven't named my files well, that doesn't always work. And then, then you're in that place where you're like, I know I have this file somewhere, but it's not coming back in my search queries. So I'm trying to be a little more careful with that. Also, the other problem with that strategy for me is that just blind Google Drive searches are like a treasure hunt to me. Like I'll be looking for one thing, but then I see so many cool things in the results that I didn't even know we had, that people have created, or that were from 3 years ago before I started and I never saw them. So they are a very easy distraction for me when I'm not using a good file structure. But I put this in there because thank you, Jim, for sharing that. And yeah.
Hey, Sheri, quick question. What just the basics, what operating system, what suite of productivity tools are you using? Are you using
Right now I'm using we just use Google Drive.
Okay.
We have a high side for our Gov stuff that then you have to use a YubiKey to get access to. And we have just the general Google Drive.
Okay.
And so then we're using the Google Suite. We can use Outlook. Nobody, when I first got here, it was hard to make that transition, but nobody uses it that I know in the company.
Okay.
Okay, so quick background on why I'm doing this. My charter now in this role is all content. It's just all content. It's really, I get involved in some other things, but it's just the full suite. It's all graphics, videos, infographics, white papers, social posts. It's just any touch point that would be considered content. And that's for our direct sales, for our channel partners. So I'm creating campaigns and content, or modifying content for our partner portal. The joint campaigns we do with tech partners. I don't really do a lot of paid myself, but I will support the paid campaigns from the field marketing team. And so the whole way things are organized as Zscaler is just different than where I came from, with field marketing being its own things separate from content. But I create a lot of content, a couple hundred pieces this year. I think last year I did like 110 or something like that. So, and just managing it all is getting really difficult. So I divided this into 4 slides. I'm going to try to go through them quick because we're already at 6:12 and just try to get some feedback and sharing. So yes, Chris, I use Google Drive to store things. I do keep a lot of things on my local drive, and I put Boo in there because we're not supposed to do that. Because if anything happens to my computer, that stuff's all lost. So I'm trying to have the discipline to upload. There are reasons why I do that. And anybody who's like, if you're using Google, I don't like Google Slides. I really prefer to create in PowerPoint. And almost everybody I know prefers PowerPoint, but so that means you've got to download the Google file, the slides file, work it in PowerPoint, and then upload it again. And so there's just a lot of that back and forth with local drive. I don't know an answer for that. We do have a DAM that we deployed about a year ago called Binder. I like Binder. In the course of producing this, last night I reached out to our Binder lead and asked them, hey, does Binder give you the ability to export lists of the content? I don't know if it does. I've never seen reports from it. I've never seen an export. It's just this, site you go to and you upload. It's integrated with our website and some other. I don't think it's integrated with Salesforce, but with some other tools and anything digital you create, you're supposed to put up in there and tag properly. And I haven't had any issues with it. We have a marketing hub, which I was going to pull up, but I am going to pull up because interestingly, this tool is one of the things that the team loves the most. This is just a internal site. This is the resource center, for all the public sector team to go for, and I've shown this before, of just events, our alliance program, and anything related to public sector marketing. And then the field marketing people break it down for stuff that's just relevant to them. And I have a content tab and I also have a product updates tab. So, and I just tons of spreadsheets, way too many spreadsheets. And I also don't know how people manage archiving your old spreadsheets. That's another issue with Google Drive. If you're not using a file structure like Jim, then when you archive things, they still show up when you search. And then I have to go, maybe I should put archive in the naming convention or something, because when they come up, then I have to spend a few minutes going, wait a minute, that's 4 content spreadsheets, content audit spreadsheets, which one is the current one? So, and I just want
Do you include dates in your naming conventions?
What? Say that again?
Do you include dates in your naming conventions?
I don't put dates. Sometimes I do at the end to keep for
Yeah,
version control.
Yep, that's what I do. That's what I found. Is
Okay.
that having dates so you can tell right off the bat which one's the most recent.
Okay.
I used to do that, but if you're posting it externally for use, you then have to make another copy of it that doesn't have the date because you don't want it dated, because people perceive that if it says May 2022, they might think it's folded out of date, but it's actually your top performing asset. And you don't want
You're
them
right.
to know. But I love it for file naming work product. For what it's worth, SolarWinds went through a million iterations, finally did a DAM, and then I've been doing a fair amount of work with clients where it's like, what do you have for public sector inventory? What do you need? What are your gaps? What all kinds of stuff? And I don't have a version that doesn't have like confidential information in it at the moment, but I landed on a master spreadsheet that can be pivot tabled, where it gets longer depending on the needs, but it'll have like the asset type and everything's like drop down pick list. So you can categorize it without as much human error. So it'll have like white paper, primary campaign theme, secondary campaign theme. If it's a product, what is the product? Is it full portfolio? Is it current? Is it not? What was the date? Is it in development? Who's developing it? The internal link, the external link. And it's a bit of a royal pain in the butt to do it the first time, but it usually takes your content audit work product. And then that turns into my foundation for a content plan. But then the spreadsheet becomes a living document. And I also put a stake in the ground on like, is it awareness? Is it consideration? Is it decision? Because it let every time I'm refreshing it, I can refresh the pivot table. So I can look and I can say, oh, you actually have 8 top of funnel assets for your modernization theme, but you have 0 or 2 this other theme, and this other theme is where we should focus. And so I was spending a lot of time counting, and I had one client that was using Asana boards to manage everything, but that wasn't letting you tally things, and they were then like manually get into PowerPoint. So everything's landed back on like a big beastly spreadsheet that becomes the source of truth. It tells you who's working on it. Is it final? Does it need a refresh? Is it old brand? Is it new brand? Which product line? And that's been like the thing that I landed on for what it's worth.
And so how did you treat when you archive things?
I mark it not current, out of date, and put in a note about it. And then like for one client where I've been working with them longer, we have a category of like needs a refresh versus it's just old and retired. But then I've got it all there with a note. So 6 months down the road, when somebody from sales is like, well, why can't I find that case study anymore? Oh, we retired it because the client said you can't use my name anymore. And it's all just in the big beastly spreadsheet.
Right. And that's super similar to what I've done is I've generated basically a master spreadsheet that's got it's got a lot of the same things that you mentioned, but it's also got some things like intention, and voice. So you get the sense of like, what sort of tone are you putting this out in? Is it, contrarian, or is it, authoritarian? Is it informative? Is it, kind of getting that sense, and then having all of that content just essentially in the same place. And then I also have a column in there for performance, so I can see how that content performed. And that's been super helpful in helping me decide like what to retire and when to retire it, just because I realized that, going back and looking at some of these stats, like, yeah, that's great, that's doing great. And then the next time you're like, wow, that's doing really great. And you just kind of don't go back and like look at what, you thought might have done great at the time, but didn't actually really do so great, and the overall scheme of things. And being able to take those, tones, take that insight and feedback that you're getting from your audience and tie that directly to the content that you're utilizing to captivate them. I found that tends to be really helpful for managing content currentness and legacy. I also found having a separate sheet within my Excel spreadsheet for retired content has made it really easy to kind of go back and be like, oh, okay, this is what I posted in 2022, and this is what did really, really well in 22, and this is what did really poorly in 22. And this is like what is probably evergreen. This is what's not evergreen. This was based on something that happened like specifically at the time, or this is probably going to be something that people are talking about consistently. And it really gives me the sense of like, okay, this is legacy, this is retired, but like I can go back and visit it and see, okay, it performed well, so maybe it's worth like revisiting, maybe it's worth checking out again, maybe it's worth kind of putting that back out there. And I've found that that's really helpful. I know that I've had to tie a lot of that spreadsheet input into the content centers that I have. I do a lot of content for clients, so I've got to manage their content hub along with my own content hub in a lot of cases, which makes that spreadsheet kind of the go-to source of truth for all of the things that I'm going to be putting into like my content hub and to their content hub. And it makes it so the content hubs that I'm working with, I use HubSpot personally. So it at least helps me make sure that my HubSpot isn't getting super messy and it's not getting super full of content that's, going to be utilized by whoever's putting it out for, you know, whatever purpose without knowing, you know, if it's legacy, if it should be there, if it's really relevant, you know, all of those things. So I think having that spreadsheets really help me understand where I need to put things and sort of what's working as well.
But, you know, and I have, and it's funny you said beastly, Lisa, because I have the beast. This is what we affectionately refer to as the beast, which I even made a tab called how to use because there's so many freaking tabs on this thing that I was trying to at least say, because it's okay for me, but if anybody else tries to look at this thing and do anything with it, I think it's very challenging. Like many, but you know, yes, we took, I don't even know where we got this from, but we just took one of these templates and I've expanded on it as I've gone, because people needed to know, you know, it was getting the links. But like you said, Lisa, and I'm missing columns from what you said, so I'll go back and look at this. And I did think about adding a column to this for refresh because it's having some kind of, excuse me, discipline tickler system that says, okay, am I going to revisit, you know, annually? So every month I'll look at what was created, or every quarter I'll look at what was created a year ago, kind of thing. And I don't have the discipline to do that right now. I just read a great article about refreshing blogs, which I'm not doing at all. So it's just kind of more like churning out all the new stuff instead of having a good plan for managing the beast. And when I try to share it with other people is the master source of truth. The only thing is we've tried to create filters, you know, so that we have filter views already preset and they can just click on one of these instead of having to get through this whole mess of stuff. So sounds like everybody's in the same boat with the beast. So
Yeah.
Yep.
And you already did it with the verticalization too, because that's really, really key. The other thing I found with one client that lived in Asana only, and a different ones in Monday, but they're newer to it, project link for where all the work product was and the creative files into the spreadsheet, because I was finding sometimes people are going back and renaming them, or
Yeah.
search in that tool wasn't as good as like Google search. So that way, if we needed to get back to it, it was just right there in the spreadsheet.
I had to do that for a project. It was brilliant. You're right. I'd like to start doing it for everything because it's fine when it's very recent, but when you have to go back, especially, and I'm searching through Asana, instead of if I could just click on the link to the old Asana task, it would be so much easier. So 100% agree with that too.
Over time,
Okay.
your Asana tasks get out of control to try and go back and find it. And if you did like derivative content, it's just crazy.
I'm not sure, like, and I have one slide for planning. We only have like 5 minutes left. Refreshing, I'll skip, but this was just top of mind for me because I'm trying to come up with a good system right now for what should trigger a refresh versus just looking at it from a calendar standpoint. And then tracking, which we've talked about before, and why tracking is so hard. But I kind of I'm curious too with people like, so this beast spreadsheet that everybody seems to use still, is that your editorial calendar or is it different? Because I have PowerPoints for planning. I've got, you know, notes from meetings with stakeholders. And we
different.
do like a quarterly review of content. Then I've got the corporate, I should say the commercial stuff and all their messaging and content that I want to repurpose for public sector, but it's not public sector specific necessarily. So is there any great tips or things that people are using for planning?
So
Sheri,
I like.
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was
Okay,
just
yeah, I'll just mention really quick. I found
Yeah.
Social Champ. It's a great platform / tool. I found that I can manage like multiple sort of identities on, and have all of the content be published within this area.
It's called,
And
Chelsea, I'm having trouble hearing you clearly. I don't know. So did you
hold
say
on.
Social Chimp?
Champ.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Sheri, my question was, have you ever asked one of the major we do it all for you providers for a presentation, like Contently?
No,
So Contently, I only know them from the production side, and I had no interest in that. I don't want to layer between me and the customer, but there was a situation where a client, the corporate parent had decided to go all in on Contently, and they were going to be forced to use them. So the only way I could service them was if I created a profile. So I did. But I mean, they promised to hand, there's the software for distribution, there's the software for reporting, there's a huge stable of content creators that you can have access to. The promise is they make it all easy. And once you reach a certain, I mean, a lot of the companies I talk to, the public sector group is not of that size. It doesn't make sense. But maybe you should have them give you their pitch and see what you think.
yeah, and get some ideas that way. That's a good idea.
Who's
Sorry,
the
Sheri,
audience for your, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I put it in the chat. It's Social Champ.
Champ. Oh, okay,
Champ, okay.
social champ. Okay, thank you.
Who's the audience for your editorial calendar, Sheri? Because like I use the spreadsheet to plan what's getting worked on when and when something's going to publish, but a sales audience is something different, and then a marketing audience is something different, because Asana, you can build an editorial calendar and pull in and color code and have your tasks, but that only works if your audience is marketing and they all have access to Asana. Whereas if it's sales, they usually want to see it on the intranet. And so like, I don't know if you can export an Asana calendar into something else, but I would think the audience is probably a factor in where you keep it.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's probably more the marketing team, both our team and the Americas and leadership too on the marketing team. Sales, maybe there's something wrong with our sales team. They don't ask for what's coming.
No.
They ask for stuff they want, but it's not like they say we want to know what content is coming. I think the only time I really push back ahead of time with them, or give them that preview, is when we're getting ready for product launches or some kind of big campaign launch, so they know what's coming. Or like if I'm sending out, I always tell them when we're sending out the newsletter, think maybe it's any communications that are going to be going out to their accounts, so they're in the loop. But
Yeah.
other than that, the way I tell them is through that marketing hub, through any regular meetings we have with those teams, and through Slack. Maybe there's a better system for that.
No, that makes sense.
There are challenges when they're too involved, and then there are challenges when they're not involved. I mean, I've got a client.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times stuff is broken down because SMEs disagree and start arguing. And then the Google Doc looks like someone threw up on it, and it's just, it can be rough. We're honestly still trying to work through the best practice. I mean, obviously they're in the front lines, you want to hear, but there's challenges either way. Either they're not involved enough, or you get them involved, and it greatly slows things down.
What I am doing now is I'm having quarterly reviews with
Good.
them, content reviews, and part of the purpose of that is to also get everybody to, instead of coming to me one-on-one, to go in that setting and like say, this is where we're going to plan out and prioritize. So that, because I'm already churning out a lot of content, but yes, you can't do, or also to give the other people on the sales team the visibility of the asks that their colleagues are putting in, and is that common, especially on state and local. We'll get requests in. It's like, okay, well, should we build a template for each state for this type of a document? And then you can take the template and customize it with stats and information for your territory, but we're not doing a one at a time for every state and local event. So we are looking at that. So it does help when even for the visibility to see what their colleagues are doing.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, look at your workflow and try and pick something that uses stuff you're already using. Because every time I try and create a standalone, it just gets hard. And if you're using Asana to request creative and other stuff, you might be able to, if you have an advanced Asana user, which I'm not, but I had someone who was, you then have like a step when it's finalized where it can then be added into a calendar, or it can hit the editorial calendar and you can color code within Asana based on like vertical or audience or asset type. So that could like feed into the ed cal without adding a lot of extra layers if someone can technically do it.
Yeah, like
Lisa,
I'm trying to have discipline of having, but again, then I'm just creating more spreadsheets. But now I have a spreadsheet where I'm trying to get all the social graphics asks for the quarter.
Yeah.
Because when I put them in one at a time, it takes, the SLA with our creative department is whatever, 3, 4, 5 days for every single social graphic, when they're telling me, hey, if you would just give us a list, we'll batch it out and we'll give it back to you in batches. And I've had that damn spreadsheet open for like 2 weeks, waiting to fill it out because I have to fill it all out ahead of time, and so part of it's on me, and then I get busy, and so then you get reactive instead of proactive.
It sounds weird, but with one client, we ended up appending social into the far right of the big content spreadsheet, if there was social available, and then dropped in the link, the graphic, the copy, so that, and was it evergreen or not? I think Chelsea said that earlier, flagging, is it evergreen or time bound? And a question you asked earlier for content refresh, when I had PMM and was doing product, we used product launch. If it was a product launch that materially changed the messaging, we used that as a trigger to refresh relevant content based on that. Outside of that, we looked at like either every quarter or every 6 months, depending on content type, but having a checkpoint in major product releases, because for some releases, you don't have to change anything. But for others, there's like a big new feature, material shift, new certification. And that was a good trigger point for refresh.